Welcome to Health Amplified, a Cleveland Clinic podcast about innovating, venturing, and amplifying the powers of healthcare change through strategic business and product development, ecosystem collaboration, and transformational leadership. I'm your host, Dr. Will Morris, and with me, as always, is Dr. Akhil Saklecha, Managing Director of Cleveland Clinic Ventures. Today, we have a special treat. We have Dr. Chen, who is the chair and founding director of the Center of Immunotherapy and Precision Immuno-Oncology, joining us. This is a new chapter in both our research, but also in our important growth around immuno-oncology. And so absolute pleasure to have Dr. Chen joining Akhil and I. So Dr. Chen, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much. It's a pleasure. And thank you for the opportunity to come and chat with you.
So I guess the first thing, just kind of level setting, is what is immuno-oncology? Why is it so important? And what are some of the prime examples of things that have, really advanced the field?
Sure. Yeah, happy to talk about that. Well, our focus in our center is on immunotherapy, and most of the activity has been in cancer or in oncology, as you aptly put. It's been absolutely transformative for the field, but for cancer, but as well as for a lot of other fields as well, including, as you see now, with vaccines for COVID and for autoimmunity. But for cancer, it's very meaningful because the field of immuno-oncology really started probably about a century ago with Cooley and others who at that time noticed that the immune system or infections can actually help fight off cancers. And over the decades, there's been a lot of work involved until I would say in the last 2 decades or so forth. We as a field have been realizing that the immune system in patients can actually be reinvigorated or activated to fight cancer. And so this has played out in most recent years with the excitement behind immune checkpoint blockade and other agents that have really just absolutely transformed the pharmaceutical and cancer therapeutic industry. We're now able to really dramatically increase survival and for the first time really sort of open up towards the possibility of cure in many of these patients. And that has been very important both from a scientific perspective and a practice perspective. Practice perspective, we're now seeing long-term survivors, not rarely, but pretty routinely now. As an example, we ran a trial with renal cell carcinoma with my cohort colleagues at Memorial Sloan Kettering when I was there. When I was recently, I recently moved here. But when I was there, which, for renal cell carcinoma in the metastatic setting, classically, survival and response is extremely low. Survival, is really on the order of, response is on the order of only a couple percent, really. No chemos really work. And now, in this last trial with some combination immunotherapy regimens, we're looking at 70 to 80% response rates, right? So within a couple years, you're really seeing the promise of anti-cancer therapy coming to fruition. And immunotherapy really has sort of addressed something that was fundamentally not understood, meaning to consolidate a lot of what we see from therapy. You need the immune system to have your back, all right? So it needs to really mop up what's going on. So as an emergency physician and others, you guys may know that antibiotics in immunocompromised patients don't work as well, right? And you need to have the immune system to help kick that offending agent. So that's what the field's about. It's really understanding immuno-oncology, understanding how the immune system interacts with cells that don't behave, right? How the immune system recognizes these as foreign, and really how to manifest these for better treatments. I think antibodies like pembrolizumab and nivolumab are now billion-dollar drugs. Really quite an amazing story in terms of drug development. But there's a lot of things on the horizon, including new small molecules, new antibodies, new vaccines. Case in point, a lot of people don't realize that the current cohort of COVID vaccines, they were all repurposed from cancer vaccines, all right? So, a Moderna, BioNTech and a company that I started, Gritstone. We were all in it together. We were all small companies early on. Some of this you've heard about where Moderna and others have repurposed what these vaccine delivery mechanisms and platforms were originally for cancer, simply sticking on a spike protein for COVID and see that you see these amazing protective responses. So the field of immunotherapy really stretches and touches on a lot of elements of healthcare that involves immune health, right? And that's what our center is really about. We've put together a program that I can talk about, during this podcast to really bring a lot of this activity and spark some of this work synergistically together at the Cleveland Clinic.
So you bring up actually a great topic, which is, when you came here and you were recruited to start the center, it would be nice to understand what your vision is for the Center for Immunotherapy and Precision Immuno-Oncology.
Yeah, I think that I'm really just sort of amazed at the thought and the dedication that the Cleveland Clinic leadership has really shown, specifically Tom Mihaljevic and Serpil Erzurum and Jim Young and others, Herb Wiedelman. There's been, and obviously, Brian Balwell, there's been a lot of interest in sort of expanding synergy and expanding capability and innovation in the space at the Cleveland Clinic. The Cleveland Clinic, I think, is in a position that allows sort of things to be done very broadly and on a large scale with such a large healthcare footprint. And the idea behind the center, which we call for short CITI, C-I-T-I, is really a sort of like an umbrella department. Okay, it incorporates, and we're charged with developing engineered T cells like CAR Ts and so forth. So we're recruiting. We have a collaboration now with the National Center for Regenerative Medicine, which I also co-direct with the Dean of the Medical School, Stan Gerson, where we are working on engineered T cells and CAR Ts. We also have plans as part of Jobs Ohio, potentially, which potentially to expand that capability for a Cleveland Clinic site GMP facility where we can, actually develop GMP grade therapeutics, right? Like cells, vectors, and vaccines, right? There's currently no way to do that here right now. So we want to be to have activity at the Cleveland Clinic main campus to be able to, really take advantage of some of those opportunities. So that's one of the things we're doing. Second thing we're doing is really we have a research, what amounts to a research department that I'm building now and recruiting for, called the Immune Medicine Research Division. That's part of Lerner here. And thirdly, we have a couple different programs that we're running that we've started up. We've started up a state-of-the-art clinical trials correlative core service called the IML, or the Immunomonitoring Laboratory, that enables clinicians here who are doing early phase trials to bank samples, to do complex immunologic assays. I mean, if you're going to run a vaccine assay and you don't have a place to analyze your, the responses, that's not good, right? So this is a fundamental requirement to be involved in the clinical translational space for everything from vaccines to immunotherapies, right? So that's called the IML. We're actually the immunomonitoring facility for the entire case Comprehensive Cancer Center and Cleveland Clinic enterprise here, so that's good. And a couple other things. We've recruited a computational immunologist to do the data science part, to hope to work towards developing informatics platforms and data platforms to be able to deal with all the genomics data and complex data. So this is the computational immunology team that we've set up here. And all this sort of rolls into and synergizes with folks working on precision oncology as well, because it's one problem, right? If you're gonna look at and design all these approaches using data, this it's important that we work with the precision oncology efforts here. So those are all the main elements of the center. It's one of the main centers that I think the Cleveland Clinic just wanted to invest in. You've heard about a second one, which is just launched with Jobs Ohio, the pathogen one. These are two of the bets that the Cleveland Clinic has to try to spearhead the innovation in treatment and research that they want to see progress in.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I love is as I learn more, I realize, like you mentioned, the umbrella nature. There are so many facets and things that we need to build to grow and to partner. I'm curious, recruitment, bringing in the talent and growing it is one aspect, or the other is to create these partnerships. You mentioned partnering with Case Western Reserve and Dr. Gerson. What's your vision also of partnering with pharma, biotech, or even informatics cores that may be adjacents, but bringing in talent? What are your thoughts on kind of creating harmony underneath that umbrella?
Yeah, well, there's a couple elements to that, and it's a great question. So one of the strategic elements of the vision that we all have really is, as we are trying to position ourselves to being involved in analytic components and correlative components of clinical trials, this is a very nice way to demonstrate your innovative nature and hence attract industry to come do your early phase trials here, right? So we are already partnering with a number of folks, including folks like Alkermes, Alliance Trials. We've talked to, we're in talks with folks, technology folks like Illumina, other pharmaceutical companies to really partner more closely here. Some of that has already started. We're working with various partners, industry partners now to analyze their clinical trials, and it makes it more attractive to run these innovative trials at Cleveland Clinic, right? The other component of this really is to have an in-house innovation engine, right? And that's what we're doing. That's what the recruitment is for. My recruitment is really geared towards this sort of physician scientist space where we are, really interested in folks bringing here developmental therapeutics efforts, developing new CAR-Ts, developing new cancer vaccines and so forth. And that's why we've invested heavily in these resources like the GMP facilities and so forth to enable this type of therapeutic development right here, right? It's one thing, I think, an important part to collaborate and run trials based on pharmaceutical assets from companies and from others. But it's also equally important to have Cleveland Clinic be a home and an engine for new drugs, targets, and assets ourselves as well, right? That's part of the picture. And so we've tried to set up and invest in resources and capabilities to try to make this possible along with recruits.
So you bring up a great concept, which is really, I think, laying down the foundation of really an innovative pipeline of concepts, people, eventual products that can get into patients at some point, and really enabling the innovations and ventures groups to latch on to those that innovation that's occurring. So I'm curious though, since we have you here, and without getting too technical, is there a way for you to explain the premise of using the large-scale genomic analysis to drive an understanding of tumor development and then create a path for that individualized treatment? I mean, I think that's really the holy grail, is to take population-based data, then the genomic analysis, and then driving it towards personalized medicine. We've certainly heard a lot of talk about that, but since we have you here, it'd be great to see if we could maybe get a little bit of insight as to how you're thinking about that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, your question is also a very good one, Akhil. It spans a lot of what's happening in the field now. You see most of this right now happen in cancer. Okay, so basically the paradigm is you sequence a tumor, and a patient's tumor, you figure out if there are any actionable signals or drivers, and then you tailor your therapies for them, right? So some of our own work, over the last 10 years or so on this particular topic includes looking at, which patients respond best to immune checkpoint blockade, right? Like pembrolizumab and nivolumab and so forth, Keytruda, right, which is a trade name. So our work resulted in the first two, tumor agnostic cancer treatment approvals in the field, right? So we know now that high mutational load, when tumors have a lot of mutations, right, those are very, very sensitive. Those tumors are very sensitive to immune checkpoint blockade. That's now been FDA approved. And then the other side of the coin is this phenotype called mismatch repair deficiency, right? So these tumors are a very classic type of tumor. Lynch syndrome, as you may be involved in, is a genetic syndrome, is related to this. These patients have a defect in the tumors about the ability to repair DNA. They get a lot of mutations. All these mutations are then seen by the immune system, and then treatment with immune checkpoint blockade is really effective for these patients. So this enabled and probably expanded, made available immune checkpoint blockade now. It probably increased the number of patients that have gotten approval for treatment by at least 400 or 500 fold compared to what was before, right? So it is reaching folks. The other element, and there are a lot of other utility, including looking at targeted therapies, for different different cancers, like EGFR inhibitors, right, and ALK-ROS inhibitors. These are small molecules designed to target different genes. So this is an important concept. You sequence a tumor, you figure out what's going on, what are the molecular mechanisms that go awry, and then you tailor these to the treatment. That's more of a diagnostic paradigm. Sequencing tumors are now also very important in terms of identifying what you can target and for making drugs, for instance. So you can, for instance, look at what type of mutations go awry, and then you can design T cells that actually target those, right? So that's what's being done now. The first engineered T cell or CAR T that's been on the market, you see this all over the news, is against CD19, right? So Novartis and others now target this. We're trying to invest a lot in this and have a homegrown a program to explore next generation CAR Ts. And subsequently, there's a whole cottage industry on cancer vaccines. So as you can see now, some of these recombinant vaccines, like with the COVID vaccine, really work, and they make a lot of immunity. And so, as soon as COVID calms down, I think folks and many of us are going to get back to the work of trying to find the cancer epitopes that we should be putting into these vaccines for cancer therapies. And so those are derived directly from genomic data too, figuring out what those targets should be. So, it's multifaceted, Akhil. There's a lot of different aspects to this and a lot of utility. Already it's becoming standard of care. It's pretty much unconscionable now that for certain disease types not to get genomic profiling. Certainly for things like lung cancer and for melanoma, it's required.
Yeah. You commented on kind of, one of the benefits of all of this work has actually been with the pandemic and the unbelievable rapid ability to identify, build, and then deploy vaccination. And it's amazing that the lay press and the public are actually, kind of beginning to talk the talk. That education is permeating. Yeah. But there is actually a lot of work that went in before this, right? It's not just saying, hey, it took us 9 months or 6 months to create a vaccine. It was on the shoulders of a ton of science and a ton of. What's the time horizon when you think about putting this all together? And Dr. Mahalovic or others says, okay, well, when will we see the fruits? What do you see as the kind of the time horizon of kind of these types of investments and kind of, the ability to ultimately reach patient care?
Well, on a smaller scale, it's already started, right? I mean, coming here, one of the first things I did was set up and launch the immune monitoring laboratory, or the clinical trials translational core, right? So this is the beginning, right? Basically, we're partnering with folks all over Cleveland who are running clinical trials to analyze trials and to actually use this as a ability to bring first in human trials to Cleveland. Okay, so accessibility is key for early agents, right? And also being a part of the science. The second thing is that this is a rapidly moving space. I mean, we're developing CAR Ts and so forth and running trials all the time. There's well, I'll mention that it's not just immune and cancer related. Remember, cell therapy is also stem cell therapy as well, yep. Right? So we're running those here, and those trials are being run by a city senator member, Amy Leitner, for instance, who is treating inflammatory bowel disease and using the anti-inflammatory capabilities of that cell therapy for a lot of clinical trials. There's been a huge amount of interest because, as you know, inflammatory bowel disease can be just absolutely awful. Right, you get those unhealing lesions and so forth, and so that's exciting. There are other aspects as well. We have recently, with a company that I started called Gritstone, just partnered with the national, with Tony Fauci, the NIAID at NIH for a second generation COVID vaccine that actually instead of using one epitope, it uses 20. Okay, so to try to get around that resistance that may develop. And this will be starting trials in partnership with the NIH, following a similar paradigm as Moderna. Right, that's how Moderna did this with partnering with NIH. So we hope to see some of those results soon, and to expand this into later phase trials. So I'd say, this is an extremely fast-moving field. I think both in cancer and infectious diseases, you're already seeing a lot of activity in terms of these efforts getting into people.
Well, I have to say this half an hour has been absolutely spectacular. I think we've just established that there's an unbelievable umbrella in which you are kind of slowly filling in the pieces. And I expect that we will have many follow-up podcasts with you, Dr. Chen, to hear, the amazing teams that you're building, whether it be informatics or CAR T. It is an unprecedented vision. But at the end of the day, I think that, you put it so eloquently, is getting the right treatment to the right patient is exactly what we owe it to our patients. So thank you very much. This is Will Morris, Akhil Saklecha signing off for another Health Amplified podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Health Amplified, a Cleveland Clinic podcast. Be sure to subscribe to hear new episodes. Stay up to date with all of our programming by following us on Twitter at CC Innovations and LinkedIn by searching Innovation at Cleveland Clinic.